I maintained the interlocking for about 6 months, and then I decided that I didn't want to do it anymore. And here is the reason why. Hey baes, welcome back to my channel. My name is Catherine Alexandra, and on today's video I am going to be explaining to you guys the difference between interlocking your locks versus retwisting them. But before we get into the video, I just retwisted my locks myself, and y'all, let's talk about the result. Let's talk about the growth, okay? I'm so hyped right now. My hair just came out so good. So this is my third time retwisting my locks myself. And if you guys are very familiar with my lock journey in previous videos and also on my social media, you guys will know that I started my lock journey using the 2-strand twist method. And for the first 6 months, I maintained them by interlocking my roots. I was going to a loctician who was washing and doing all of the maintenance for me. And around month 6 is when I decided that I wanted to switch over to retwisting my locks. And then for the last 3 months, I've been maintaining them myself. But just to explain what interlocking is, I will insert a clip here just to show what it looked like the day when I first got my locks installed and the process and the method that the loctician used in terms of interlocking it. Interlocking is basically a technique where you take the end of your lock and you loop it through the base of your lock where the new growth is. And you can do this in different directions. Some people do 2-point rotations or 4-point rotations. Essentially, it's you either going north, south, or up and down, or up, down, left, right. That is what you would call retightening your lock. So retwisting it is one method, then there's retightening, which is connected to interlocking. In terms of my experience with interlocking, the reason why I decided to start my locks using that method was, first and foremost, I just went to my consultation with the loctician that started my locks, and through talking to her and also doing research prior to, I did a lot of research before I started my lock journey, and I came across interlocking, and you know, it caught my eye. One thing about it is that with interlocking, you can space out the maintenance. So most people get their locks retightened every like 8 to 12 weeks. So that was something that was pretty eye-catching to me, just because I personally don't like going to the hair salon. So the less often I have to go, the better. When I had my consultation with the loctician that started my locks, we discussed things. I always knew that I wanted to start my locks using the 2-strand twist method, but I was a little stuck between interlocking or just retwisting it. And just having those conversations with her, and also just telling her, you know, I do work out and this, that, and the third, she suggested that I do the interlocking route. She also said that at any point in time, if I didn't like it, I could stop and switch over to retwisting. So I figured, why not? Let me go ahead and just give this a try. And so as I explained earlier in the video, I maintained the interlocking for about 6 months. And then I decided that I didn't want to do it anymore. And here is the reason why. So there's a common misconception with interlocking that it thins out your locks, and that is not true. You can also thin out your locks from retwisting them too often. So that is not true. The method itself does not thin out your locks. But with interlocking, it does create a more compact, skinnier looking lock. And I think that's why people say thin. It's not that it's a thin lock, it's just a skinnier lock. So when you think about and you look at interlocking and the essence of it, it really is like creating or starting a plait in your hair. As many of us know, if you were to put plaits in your hair, it's going to be very compact. If you were to take a plait and drench it in water, and then you take a twist, a 2-strand twist, and you drench it in water, right? That plait is going to stay compact. It's going to stay the way that it is. It might swell a little bit, but for the most part, it's going to stay the way that it is. Whereas if you were to take a twist, and I'm talking about this being on natural hair, if you were to take a twist and drench it in water, a twist is going to swell up, and it's gonna have space and room to expand. So in many ways, the best way that I can describe interlocking versus retwisting is that interlocking is almost like a plait. It's very compact. Once you do that interlocking, it's gonna stay. You can wet your hair up, you can wash your hair, you can wash your scalp. It's gonna loosen up a little bit, but it doesn't have much room to swell and expand as a twist would. And that is pretty much the reason why I decided to stop interlocking was that I noticed that my locks were very, very compact. I've always wanted more thicker, fuller looking locks, and I've never been one to really care too much personally about having super neat parts and roots that weren't frizzy. And that's one of the good things about interlocking, is that because it's so compact, you don't have to worry about your roots getting as frizzy looking as often. If you're somebody who works out, like I said, it's a great option. It's also a great option too if you're somebody that's concerned about washing your locks yourself and you're concerned about your roots, you know, getting very puffy. It's not as bad with interlocking versus if you were retwisting it. No way, shape, or form am I promoting one method over the other. I just have experience doing both, so I feel like I can confidently talk about both experiences and why I prefer one over the other. And I know when it comes to locks, like the whole process of it, and when you do research and everything, it can get very overwhelming at times, but just know that what works for one person doesn't always work for the next. And I always remind people of this, is that it's great that you do your due diligence and you do your research, but also take into consideration the fact that just because you follow somebody and it looks like their hair texture is similar to yours, that doesn't mean that the exact products and the exact method that they use on their hair is going to be the same for you. Try different things, try different methods. The great thing about interlocking and retwisting is that you can go from one method to the other. Like I said, I did it myself and my locks are fine. They're not damaged or anything whatsoever. But definitely make sure that you are just doing your research. And also, if you are going to a loctician to start your locks, you have that conversation during that consultation and they'll just discuss with you what is best for you based on your hair texture. Some people chose to start their locks using the 2-strand twist method, but some hair textures actually respond better to comb coils. I knew for me personally that comb coils was just not gonna work. I have very, very tightly coily hair, so I always knew that 2-strand twist was gonna be my way to go, but I needed some guidance when it came to the maintenance. And I started off interlocking, decided I didn't really like it anymore. I did not like how my lock was starting to form, and so I switched over to retwisting, and now I'm very, very happy with the results. I feel like my locks are a lot fuller looking. They have the ability to expand and get very, very thick. That's personally the look that I prefer when it comes to locks from myself. So one thing that I do want to do is just show you guys a visual of how it actually looks to have interlock maintenance done on your hair versus retwist. And hopefully you guys can see this. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my hair down. Here I have a lock in the middle of my hair, and if you take a good look at my lock, you can see right here in the middle there is like an indentation. It looks skinnier and thinner here than it does the rest of the lock. This here is where I was interlocking it at. This is where I was interlocking. You see an indentation there, and then here is where I've been retwisting. Hopefully you guys could see that. And so that's really the difference. And I think this is where the misconception of interlocking thins your locks comes from. It's not that it's thinning your lock, but just the nature of it, because it's being retightened. It's like starting a braid at your hair. It's more compact here. Whereas you go up towards the base, it's a lot fuller and thicker. This is where I've been retwisting it. It has the ability to swell and expand here, whereas here it's a little bit more tight. And one thing I do want to highlight is, even though I did switch between the two methods, it's not visibly noticeable until I call attention to it. More than anything, you can definitely feel the difference more than you can see it. And I do have a lot of my locks, you know, have that indentation on it, but it doesn't bother me. I know that as my hair gets longer, that indentation is going to be lower. I can always cut it off, but it doesn't really bother me. Let me see if I can show you guys another lock so you can get an idea of it. Okay, so here is another lock here where I was interlocking it, and if you look here, right here is where I was interlocking my lock. You see that indentation? And then as you go up towards the base of my lock is where I was retwisting it. So that is ultimately the difference between interlocking your locks versus retwisting it. When it comes to which method is best for you, just take into consideration how you want your locks to develop and mature over time. If you're somebody that's more concerned with having super neat looking roots and parts and skinnier looking locks, are you somebody that prefers to have locks that are fuller and thicker and have the ability to, you know, expand? That's really just something to consider when it comes to which maintenance is best for you. And I know sometimes people alternate between both. There are a lot of people who will retwist their hair and then they'll interlock it maybe twice a year or 3 times a year. Like I said, you can switch between the 2 methods and your locks will be perfectly fine. So hopefully this video was helpful to anyone that is on their lock journey, maybe starting out or considering starting their journey, and they just need some guidance on what is the right thing to do. Do not overcomplicate it. Do not overthink it. Just try different things and you will find what works best for you. And with that being said, make sure that you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe and turn your notifications on, and I will see you in the next video. Beautiful.